Evan sat alone in his small hut on the icy planet. The wind howled outside, shaking the thin wooden walls. Snow hit the windows like tiny knives. He wrapped his arms around his knees and tried to stay warm. The heater in the corner hummed softly, but it could only do so much. The storm was strong, much stronger than any forecast had predicted. He checked the supplies again. There were cans of food, a few bottles of water, and some medical items. He knew he could survive the storm for a few days if it lasted, but the blizzard seemed endless. The sky outside was a gray wall, and he could barely see the frozen mountains in the distance. A loud crack echoed through the wind. Something hit the side of the hut. Evan jumped up and ran to the door. He looked outside, but the snow was too thick. He couldn't see anything. Just as he turned back, the door swung open with a violent push. The wind blew hard and snow flew inside. Then he saw her. The alien woman lay on the floor near the door. She was small and fragile, with skin that shimmered pale blue. Her eyes were silver, wide with fear. Her clothes were torn, and her body shook from the cold. Evan froze for a moment. He had never seen anyone like her before. His heart beat fast, not with fear but with surprise. She looked up at him, and for a second her eyes were full of terror. She tried to crawl away, moving backward on the floor. Evan raised his hands slowly. "It's okay," he said softly. "I won't hurt you." She made a strange sound, not words, and her body trembled. Evan stepped closer but carefully, not wanting to scare her more. He grabbed a blanket from the corner and wrapped it around her. She shivered violently, but did not attack him. He took a deep breath and knelt beside her. "I am Evan," he said. "You are safe here. The storm is strong. You need to rest." She looked at him with silver eyes, still afraid. Then she whispered something he didn't understand. He could tell it was her language, soft and musical. He shook his head. "I don't understand, but I will help you." Slowly, she stopped moving away. She looked at the heater, then at the small fire in the stove. Evan saw her lips move, trying to speak. "Lyra," she said finally. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "Lyra?" Evan repeated. "I will call you Lyra. It's nice to meet you." She did not smile, but she nodded slightly. The fear in her eyes was still there, but less sharp now. Evan gave her some water in a small cup. She hesitated, then took it with shaky hands. She drank slowly, careful not to spill. He watched her closely. She was exhausted, and she looked cold, very cold. The wind outside grew louder. Snow pounded against the roof. Evan could see the door shaking with the force. He decided to make her a place to lie down. He brought a small mattress from the corner and placed it near the stove. He covered it with blankets. Lyra crawled to it, still wary of him. She curled up like a small cat, trying to get warm. Evan sat on the other side of the room, watching her. He wanted to say something, anything to make her feel safe. But he knew words were not enough. She had come from somewhere far, somewhere strange, and she feared humans. He remembered reading about her kind. They were explorers and scouts from a nomadic tribe that lived in the mountains. They were rarely seen by humans. Some people thought they were dangerous, but Lyra did not seem dangerous. She was scared, cold, and alone. The snowstorm had driven her here, to his small hut. He felt a strange connection to her. He wanted to help, to protect her, and maybe to understand her world. He decided to start slowly. He took out some simple food, bread and dried meat. He offered it to her. She looked at it, then at him. After a long pause, she reached out and took a piece. She ate carefully, slowly. Evan smiled. This was a small victory. "Lyra," he said softly, "the storm will pass. You can stay here until it ends." She nodded again, but her eyes were still alert. She did not trust him fully, but she seemed to accept that he meant no harm. Evan returned to his chair and sat quietly, keeping an eye on her. The wind howled and the snow piled higher outside. The world was white and cold, but inside the hut there was a small warmth, the warmth of a fire, and maybe something else. Hours passed. The storm continued to rage. Evan tried to talk to her, asking simple questions. He spoke slowly, using easy words. Lyra listened, sometimes answering with short phrases. She explained that she was separated from her group while scouting the mountains. The storm had caught her off guard, and she had run to the first shelter she found. Evan nodded. He understood. He had been in storms before, but never like this. He had never seen snow so thick it could hide the mountains completely. He offered her more water, more blankets. She accepted, and slowly she stopped shivering as violently. At one point, she looked at him directly. For a moment, the fear in her eyes softened. He could see curiosity now, mixed with caution. She seemed to wonder who he was and why he was helping her. Evan smiled gently. He wanted her to know he was human, but different from what she feared. The night passed slowly. Outside, the storm continued. Inside, the small hut was quiet except for the wind and the soft breathing of Lyra as she rested. Evan stayed awake for a while, watching the heater, making sure it did not fail. He thought about what he would do when the storm ended. He wondered if her people would come for her and if they would trust a human. He hoped they would, but he knew it was not his choice. As dawn approached, the wind started to ease. The snow outside was still thick, but the blizzard had lost some of its fury. Evan looked at Lyra. She was awake now, sitting on the mattress wrapped in blankets. Her silver eyes looked at him cautiously. "Storm is slowing," he said softly. She nodded. She did not speak, but she looked at the window. He could tell she was thinking about her tribe. He wanted to help her, to make sure she could get back safely. He stood and went to the small table. He took out a map of the mountains. He pointed to the ridges and valleys. He tried to show her where her tribe might be. Lyra leaned closer, studying the map. Her eyes narrowed, concentrating. Evan pointed to a route that was slightly safer than the others, with fewer cliffs and open areas. She nodded again, slowly, almost approving. Then, suddenly, the hut shook. A piece of snow fell from the roof, breaking the silence. Lyra jumped and grabbed Evan's arm. He held her hand gently, letting her feel he was not going to leave. "It's okay," he said again. She seemed to understand, and she relaxed slightly. They sat together in the quiet hut, two strangers from very different worlds, watching the storm outside. Evan wondered what it would take for her to trust humans fully. Lyra wondered if humans could be kind, or if she was just lucky this one was. The sun started to rise behind the mountains, faint light breaking through the gray sky. The snow outside glimmered slightly. Evan knew the storm would eventually end. Lyra's tribe would come. But for now, in the small hut, they were safe. And for the first time that night, Lyra felt a small sense of peace. The human next to her had not harmed her. He had helped her survive the storm. Evan leaned back in his chair and watched her. He did not speak. He did not need to. The warmth of the fire, the blankets, and their silent understanding filled the small room. Outside, the blizzard raged still, but inside, there was hope. And in the quiet moment, Evan thought that maybe this meeting was more than chance. Maybe it was the beginning of something new, something neither of them had expected. The storm would pass, and when it did, Lyra would leave, returning to her people. But she would remember the human who had helped her, and Evan would remember the alien woman who had walked into his hut and changed his night forever. Evan woke up to the soft sound of wind. It was calmer now, but the cold still pressed against the hut. His eyes opened slowly. and he saw Lyra sitting near the stove. She was wrapped in blankets, her silver eyes watching the fire. Her skin had more color now, and she looked stronger. But she was still careful, still tense, as if any sudden sound could make her run. Evan sat up quietly so he would not scare her. She turned her head toward him, and for a brief moment they simply looked at each other. There was no fear in her eyes now, only uncertainty and curiosity. "Good morning," Evan said softly. His voice was calm and slow. He did not want to break the fragile peace between them. Lyra blinked and nodded. She did not speak at first. Then she whispered, "Storm's still strong?" Her accent was heavy, but the words were clear. Evan smiled a little. "Yes, but better than before. The worst part is over." She watched him, studying his face as if she wanted to understand every expression. Evan stood up and stretched his arms. His muscles were stiff from sleeping in the chair. He walked to the window and wiped away a layer of frost. The world outside was white and endless. Snow covered everything, and the sky was pale. Evan turned back to her. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Lyra tilted her head, not sure what he meant. Evan pointed at the food on the table. She understood and nodded slowly. He brought her some bread and warm water. She accepted them with careful hands. When she ate, she took small bites, chewing slowly, as if trying to understand the taste. Evan sat near her but kept some distance. He wanted her to feel safe. He watched her for a moment. She was different from anything he had seen before. Her movements were graceful but cautious. Her eyes seemed to hold stories from places far from his world. "How far did you travel?" Evan asked. He spoke slowly so she could understand. Lyra looked at him and then at the door, as if thinking about the long path she had taken. "Many steps," she said. "Wind strong. I fall. Snow-covered trail. I run and see light. Your hut." Evan listened carefully. Her voice was soft, but her words carried weight. He imagined her walking alone through the blizzard, unable to see, trying to survive. The idea made him feel a deep respect for her. "You can rest here as long as you need," Evan said. "You are safe." Lyra looked at him again with a slow nod. There was trust beginning to grow, but not fully. She still watched him as if trying to understand every move. The wind outside picked up again, making the hut shake. Lyra flinched and wrapped the blanket tighter around herself. Evan saw her reaction and spoke gently. "It is just the wind. The hut is old, but it will hold." She did not look convinced, but she tried to calm herself. Evan felt a quiet sadness. She had been through something frightening. Alone in the storm, unsure if she would live through the night. Hours passed slowly. They sat together, sometimes talking, sometimes silent. Evan tried to explain simple things to her. He pointed at objects and spoke their names. Lyra repeated them quietly, learning little by little. She pointed to things in the hut as well, telling him the words in her own language. Some sounded sharp, others soft. Evan repeated them, and she corrected him with a faint smile. It was the first time he saw her smile. It was small and quick, but it warmed the room in a way the stove never could. Evan smiled back, feeling a strange comfort around her. At one point, Evan took out his small communication device. It was cracked on one side, but still working. He placed it on the table and turned it on. A soft blue light appeared. Lyra gasped softly and leaned back, fear returning to her eyes. Evan raised his hand. "It is okay. This is safe. It is only for messages." He tapped the screen gently. She watched closely, still unsure. He switched to a simple map view. The mountains spread across the screen in blue lines. Lyra leaned forward again, interest replacing fear. She pressed a finger against the screen. Her touch left a small sparkle from the frost on her skin. "Your tribe must be somewhere near the mountain line," Evan said. He pointed to a region farther north. Lyra studied the map, then shook her head. She pointed farther east. Evan zoomed in. Her silver eyes followed every movement. She touched a valley on the screen. "Here," she whispered. Evan nodded. "If the storm eases, we can look for a signal from your people. Maybe they are searching for you." Lyra looked at him with a mix of hope and fear. "If they come and see human, they fear." Evan paused. He understood the danger. "Will they hurt me?" he asked softly. Lyra thought for a long moment. Not hurt, but not trust. They think humans want land, want power. Evan sighed. "I do not want anything. I only want to help you." She stared at him for a while. Then she nodded slowly, almost gently. "I see. You help. You save." The hut was warm again. The fire crackled. Lyra relaxed more, and her shoulders lowered. Evan felt more at ease, too. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It felt natural. Later in the day, Evan heard a strange noise outside. Not wind, not snow. A low, vibrating sound. He went to the window and wiped the frost again. He saw something moving far in the distance. A dark shape shifting through the snow. "What is that?" Evan whispered. Lyra stood beside him, her silver eyes widening. She touched the window with her hand. "Animal," she said softly. "Big one." Evan's stomach tightened. He had heard stories about creatures that lived in the snowy plains. Strong beasts with thick fur and long claws. He grabbed a tool from the corner, a small metal rod used for repairs. It was not a weapon, but it was something. The noise grew louder. The shape came closer. Lyra stepped back, fear returning to her face. Evan stood in front of her. He did not know why he did it. He just felt he had to protect her. The creature sniffed around the hut. Heavy steps circled the walls. The wood creaked. Lyra grabbed Evan's arm tightly. He could feel her trembling again. He placed his hand over hers, trying to steady her. "It will go away," he whispered. Minutes passed like hours. The creature sniffed again, then walked away. Its steps grew softer until they disappeared into the wind. Lyra let out a shaky breath. Evan turned to her. "Are you okay?" She nodded but did not let go of his arm. Her eyes were still wide, her breath still fast. He waited for her to calm down, and slowly her grip softened. "Thank you," she whispered. Evan smiled gently. "You are safe here. I will not let anything happen to you." The rest of the day went quietly. Lyra rested while Evan fixed some of the damage to the hut. Small cracks in the wood, loose boards, and a bent hinge on the door. Lyra watched him, sometimes helping by holding tools or pointing at things he missed. They worked together in a rhythm that felt natural. As evening came, the sky turned darker again. The wind picked up softly. Evan sat down near the fire. Lyra sat across from him, her blanket around her shoulders. She seemed more comfortable now, more open. "Evan," she said softly. Her voice was clearer now. "Yes?" She looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the firelight. "Why you alone here?" Evan paused. He had not expected the question. He took a slow breath. "I came here to study the weather, to understand the storms. I wanted a quiet place, but I did not think it would be this quiet. Sometimes it feels lonely." Lyra understood loneliness. She nodded. "My tribe always move, always together. But I scout alone. Sometimes I feel small." Evan smiled. "Maybe we are not so different." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Her expression softened again. "Maybe." The fire crackled gently. The hut felt warm and calm. Evan felt something change between them. They were no longer strangers. They were two people sharing a storm, sharing fear, sharing moments of quiet and warmth. Outside, the wind continued, but inside, a bond began to grow. Not strong yet, but real. And as the night fell, both Evan and Lyra felt that the meeting in the storm was not just chance. It was the start of something that neither of them fully understood yet, but both could feel in their hearts. The next morning, Evan woke to a soft light coming through the frosted windows. The storm had slowed, leaving a thick layer of snow on the ground. The wind still blew, but it was calmer now. He could hear the quiet hiss of snow against the hut. Lyra was already awake, sitting near the stove with her silver eyes focused on the small fire. Evan stretched and stood up, walking over to her. She did not speak at first, only looked at him carefully. Her skin glimmered faintly in the morning light, and she seemed more alert than yesterday. He smiled gently and offered her some water. She accepted it, drinking slowly, her movements careful and measured. "The storm is better today," Evan said softly. He pointed to the window. "We might be able to move outside soon." Lyra nodded, but her expression remained cautious. She had been through the worst of the blizzard, and the memory of the wind and snow still lingered in her mind. She touched her arms, feeling the warmth from the blankets and the stove, and slowly she began to relax. Evan prepared a simple meal, bread and dried meat again, warming it over the stove. Lyra watched him, her silver eyes curious. She had never seen humans cook like this. She hesitated, then took a small piece of bread, testing the flavor. Evan smiled at her careful movements. After breakfast, Evan decided to check the hut for damage. He moved carefully through the small space, examining the walls, the roof, and the door. Snow had piled against the sides, and some of the boards were loose. He made notes to fix them later. Lyra followed him, pointing at places she thought might be weak. Together, they began small repairs. She handed him nails, held boards steady, and showed him how to reinforce the roof in ways he had not thought of. Her knowledge of cold and snow was remarkable. As they worked, Evan asked simple questions. "Where is your tribe?" He pointed to the map he had used yesterday. Lyra traced her finger along the mountains. "Far," she said. "Many days' walk. I lost trail. Snow cover all." Evan nodded. "We will help you find them. We need signal first, then we can guide them." She looked at him unsure. "Human help? Tribe trust human?" Evan shrugged gently. "They may not trust me, but I do not hurt anyone. I help you, that is all." Lyra studied him for a moment. Then she gave a small nod. It was a beginning of trust, small but important. As the day passed, the hut became quieter. They worked together, repairing what was broken, preparing what they could for the cold night ahead. Evan showed Lyra small tools, and she showed him how to use simple knots to tie boards more firmly. They began to understand each other without needing many words. Simple gestures and shared tasks created a rhythm between them. Then, around midday, a strange sound came from outside. Not the wind, not the snow. A low growl that made both of them pause. Evan grabbed a small metal rod from the corner, not a weapon, but something to protect himself and Lyra. Lyra's eyes widened in fear, and she moved closer to him. The sound grew louder. A large creature emerged from the snow, a massive animal covered in thick white fur. Its dark eyes scanned the area, and it took slow, heavy steps toward the hut. Lyra pressed herself against Evan, trembling. He placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "Stay calm," he whispered. "It will not come in if we are still." The creature circled the hut, sniffing and pawing at the snow. Its breath was hot and misted in the cold air. Lyra's fear was palpable, and Evan felt a protective urge. He stayed still, speaking softly to her, reassuring her with words she could understand. Minutes passed like hours. The animal sniffed once more, then turned and walked away into the snowy plains. Lyra let out a shaky breath and looked at Evan. "Thank you," she whispered. He smiled gently. "You are safe." The rest of the afternoon was quiet. Evan and Lyra continued with their repairs, but now they spoke more easily. Lyra asked about simple things, like how humans cook or build. Evan asked about her people, how they live, how they survive in the mountains. She explained that her tribe moved constantly, following the snow and the animals, staying hidden from humans. They valued survival, knowledge, and trust within their own group. As evening approached, Evan suggested they prepare for the night. He stacked wood near the stove and made sure the fire would burn steadily. Lyra helped, arranging blankets and mats to keep them both warm. She was learning to trust him more, letting him be near her, showing small signs of comfort. Once everything was ready, they sat near the fire. Lyra spoke softly, describing her scouting missions, the dangers of the mountains, and the beauty of her home. Her voice was calm now, her fear lessening. Evan listened with fascination, imagining the distant peaks and valleys she described. It was a world so different from his, yet now so close through her words. Suddenly, Evan remembered the emergency beacon he had. It was small, battery nearly drained, but it could send a signal. He showed it to Lyra. She studied it carefully, her expression cautious. "Signal, tribe?" she asked. Evan nodded. "Yes. We need them to know where you are. Then they can come." Lyra hesitated. "If tribes see human, worry, angry." Evan understood. "I do not want trouble, only to help you." She looked at him for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. "Then, yes, signal." They prepared the device together. Evan explained simply how it worked. Lyra watched every step, touching the small buttons lightly, fascinated by the human technology. They went outside carefully, carrying the beacon to a small ridge behind the hut. The snow was deep, cold, and hard to move through. Lyra helped Evan keep his balance, and he helped her. Together, they climbed to a higher spot. Once there, they activated the beacon. A soft blue light pulsed from the device, sending a signal into the mountains. Evan hoped it would be enough. Lyra watched, her silver eyes reflecting the light. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope that her people would come. The wind blew around them, cold and sharp, but they stood together, keeping each other steady. Evan noticed how brave she was, even after all she had been through. Lyra noticed how careful he was, how much he wanted to help her. Hours passed, and the light from the beacon continued to pulse. Then, faintly, shapes appeared in the distance. Lyra squinted through the snow. "Tribe," she whispered. Her voice held relief and excitement. "They see." Evan smiled. "They will come. You will be safe soon." Lyra looked at him, her silver eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you," she said simply. It was enough. Words were not needed beyond that. As the tribe drew closer, gliders and sleds moving through the snow, Lyra felt a sense of peace she had not known in days. Evan stayed with her, guiding her down the ridge carefully. They returned to the hut, waiting for her people to arrive. When the tribe reached the hut, their leader approached cautiously. He studied Evan with wary eyes. Lyra stepped forward, standing between them. She explained quietly what had happened, how Evan had helped her. The leader listened, then nodded slowly. Trust was hard to earn, but Lyra's words were enough. The tribe repaired the hut, shared food, and offered thanks to Evan. Lyra stood beside him, showing him to her people, speaking highly of his help. For the first time, she felt that humans could be trusted, at least this one human. Evan watched them work, feeling a strange satisfaction. The storm had brought them together, tested them, and now created a bond. Lyra had trusted him, and he had protected her. They had faced danger together and survived. As night fell, the hut was warm and safe. Lyra sat near Evan, her silver eyes calm. Outside, the snowstorm had passed, leaving the world quiet and white. Evan realized that this meeting, born from a storm and fear, had become the start of a connection neither of them had expected. It was not just survival anymore. It was understanding, friendship, and perhaps something more. And in the quiet of the icy night, Evan and Lyra sat together, two beings from different worlds, sharing warmth, trust, and the beginnings of a bond that would last beyond the storm.